I'm going to jump into this word. I was at that conference in Washington, D.C., and it was for pro-life centers like ours in Waterloo. And so there were more than 1,000 of us sitting in this room. And this woman gets up to speak. And the minute she starts speaking, now you have to understand, I'm in a room full of believers, full of pro-life, on the front lines. We love Jesus, spirit-filled believers, but not everybody is Pentecostal. And this woman starts sharing, and I'm telling you, it was like white hot fire. I knew God was doing something in me. I knew this was a word for our church in this season we're in, and I could barely stay in my seat. At the end, when she said, stand up if you want prayer, I stood up, and I thought we were walking to the front. We weren't. You're just supposed to say where you were. But I was like, yes, me, I don't care. In a room full of 1,000 people, I received this word, and my prayer is that you will today too. So we're going to be talking about seeds. And I wonder, how many of you have ever heard of the 5 love languages? That book, right? How many of you are gifts people? Anybody? You know what I think? I feel like more people are gifts people, but they don't want to admit it. They don't want to be like, yeah, get me presents. They want to say like, no, I just am happy with quality time. That's all I need from my kids. Really, on your birthday. And I know you're like, no, really, I am. But more people are gifts people than they want to admit. I get that. And my mom is definitely a gifts person. And she'll send you before like Christmas, this is what I want for Christmas. Like she doesn't even want to risk that you're not going to get the right gift. But my mom is also super crafty. So she likes making gifts. And they're really thoughtful, and they're really from the heart. And so I grew up with this gifts person who's talented, and she sees something and can just make it. And gifts meant a lot to her, and they had to come from the heart. And so I would try and make her stuff. And once we had kids, I thought, I'm going to get crafty and give my parents really heartfelt gifts. And I really would put thought into it, but I am just not a crafty person. Like some people like Emily Vose can look at a craft and think about it and it explodes in front of her completed. I am not that way. Like it takes me lots of time and it's never going to look like it's supposed to. And so I would put all this heart into this and I would give it to her, but it would look like a hot mess. So she would kind of open the bag and say, and you could tell that it wasn't what she wanted. So somewhere along the line, or no one knew what it was. And so somewhere along the line, I thought to myself, I'm just going to get them gift cards. I like gift cards. Who doesn't like a gift card? I'm just going to do that. But she would open the gift cards and kind of give me this look. And what the look would say is, I don't really think you thought about that. I don't really think you put your heart into this Olive Garden gift card. There's no sentiment behind it. And, we have those friends that just really, really like gifts. And when it comes to the things of God, we all say, yep, I want what God has for me. I want God's gift. And so imagine today if God stood in front of you and said, I have a gift for you. Becky, I have a gift for you. This is for you, just for you. I who created you, who molded you together, who knows every hair in your head, I have a gift just for you, custom made. I've heard the cry of your heart. I know those prayers in your secret place, and this is your gift. And you say, yes, God, I can't wait. I am ready for the gift. I think today if I said God has a gift for you, you'd say, yep, give me that. And so we reach our hands in, and we just know God has really planned this gift. And we pull out seeds. And we say, I don't feel like you really thought about that. God, I don't feel like you really thought about seeds? Really? That's what you're giving me? You who has all of the entire universe at your command, you're going to give me a bag of seeds and say, here you go change the world. Really? But that's exactly what God does. Let's look at Isaiah 55, verses 8 through 11. It says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. Let me just stop right there. When you encounter people that think that they can understand God, if God is small enough to be understood, he's too small to be worshiped. Hear me, friends. My ways are not your ways. Then he says in verse 9, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. As the rain and the snow come down from heaven and do not return to it without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish, so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater. So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. So today we're going to be looking at seeds and what they mean in our spiritual life. Seed is mentioned 275 times in the Bible. So if you've ever taken a walk by the ocean or you sat in front of a mountainside, it's really hard to imagine that there are people that believe that the world wasn't created by a God. It's just huge. And we can learn so much about the Lord through nature. But sowing and reaping isn't just an agricultural principle, friends. It's a kingdom concept designed by God himself. So the first thing I want us to realize this morning is the seeds that God has given you. And I want you to think for a minute. Your seeds are whatever God has designed for you to do in the world. So let's look at some of the things that your seeds are. If you're married, one of your seeds is to be a faithful and good spouse, right? If you have children, one of your seeds is to raise your kids in the fear and admonition of the Lord. If you're an employee, one of your seeds is your opportunities at work. But for every one of us, one of our most important seeds is what the Holy Spirit has designed just for us to do, the difference that we are going to make in our circle of influence. So seeds require work. Don't you just love gifts that have some assembly required? Like you get this gift and then you have to spend, like parents, when someone gives your kids a gift, then you have to spend all day putting it together. I have a certain relative that buys me used to buy me kind of strange gifts. And she once bought me one of those fountains I don't know if I would call it a fountain, but like if you've ever been to a Chinese restaurant or sometimes a nail salon, they have they're round sort of glass things and fog comes out of them continuously. And I was a social worker at the time, and this relative thought that somehow that would be very calming to my clients if my office was filled with fog. Not really the look we're going for, but I took it to work and thought maybe I could set it up and it could be in the lobby. I don't know, maybe the kids would like it, whatever. So I take it into work, and I thought, because the picture looked like a glass bowl sitting on a tripod, it'd be easy to assemble. But early in the morning, when I first got to work, I pull it out of the box, and the directions are not in English, but there's pictures. And I think I have a master's degree. I can do this. But by the end of the day, there were 4 of us with master's degrees that worked all day long to assemble this fountain that we didn't really want, but we didn't want to admit that it was smarter than us. So we worked all day on this thing, and we get it all together. And we are so proud of ourselves. We did it finally. And it's stable, and we plug it in. And the fog comes, and about 3 seconds later, the glass just shatters and goes everywhere. We were like, forget it, clean it up, go home for the day. That's how we spent our time. But the thing is, seeds are one of those gifts that require a little bit of work. You know, when you have seeds, you have to prepare the soil. You have to dig up where you're going to put the seed. You have to put it in. You have to water the seed. It takes a season. Let me say that again. It takes a season to do something with a seed, not a day. It takes a season. You cannot just plant seeds and then say overnight there's going to be a harvest. It takes a season for a seed to grow. God has handed you something in your life that he wants you to do, but it may take a whole season for you to start to see something come of that. It's not going to happen overnight. And when we think that if it's God's will, it's going to happen quickly, we don't just get frustrated. We'll burn out and say, I quit. And because it's a process, what happens is a lot of people start to get frustrated and say, it's just taking too long. And instead of looking at it like a process, we start to look at it like a crisis. You know, we've been at New Life Church almost a year, and in Rhinebeck almost a year. And so many things have happened and changed for us in our life. When we came here, we were already in a major time of transition. Our daughter was going away to college, which is a huge change for us, not having 2 at home. Moving from Hawaii to Iowa, as you can imagine, there's a lot of adjustments there. And so here we are out of the Pacific Rim. God calls us to Rhinebeck, Iowa. And hear me, I am more convinced than ever that it was the hand and will of God that led us to this place. I know that deep in my spirit more than I ever have. And I am certain of that. But I also know this, it wasn't just for us, it was for this church. And we have seen a lot of changes in 12 months, haven't we? as a church body, we have big dreams for this church, for this city, and for your families. But first, we're going to have to do the work of seeding. And when we start looking at each other like he's in process, she's in process, this church is in process, that ministry is in process, this marriage is in process, our finances are in process, we don't give up because we understand that a process takes time. But when we start treating things like we're in crisis, we start panicking and digging up the seed before it's ever had a chance to grow. Now, hear me. This is a revelational truth. This changed I'm telling you, I could barely sit in my seat when the Holy Spirit, she didn't say it, but she said that you're in process, and the Holy Spirit dropped this deep in my heart. When you are in crisis, you become transactional. When you are in process, you become relational. Let me say this one more time. Crisis looks like this. I'm in the emergency room because I'm bleeding. And there is a transaction that must take place. I'm bleeding, I'm hurt, I'm here for help. Do what I need to do. And if I come in and I'm bleeding and you're the doctor and I give you my bloody arm, you bandage me up, you send me on my way, and we had a transaction because we are in a crisis. But if I come in and you don't do what I want, I'm going to go somewhere else because I'm in crisis. And I need a transaction to happen that makes my crisis go away. And so what happens is we start panicking because we see things as crisis that God intended us to see as process. And process looks like relational, looks like I'm in this for the long haul, looks like I don't give up on somebody when we disagree, looks like I don't walk out on my marriage when it gets tough, looks like I don't quit praying for my kids when they're not serving the Lord, because this is a process, not a crisis, and there's a difference. This is what crisis looks like. Look at this video.
I think I smell some smoke back here.
That's what
I think I smell some smoke back here.
That's what crisis looks like. Whoa, this doesn't look like I think it should. I'm out of here. And what happens in our Christian walk is God has given us seeds. We plant them and we start thinking it's not happening fast enough. It's not growing quick enough. This thing isn't fixing itself. I prayed for a healing and it didn't get healed overnight. And so we become people that say, I'm always in crisis. And crisis causes you to be transactional. ER doctors sometimes say this, treat them and street them. You know, it's not very nice, but I've heard it from them. Treat them and street them, right? We don't do that in the church. We don't treat you and street you. We don't want you to come in when you're having a bad day, pray you feel better, go out, and we see you again 5 years later when you're having another bad day. We're in it together. We're a church family. We are relational and we are in process. And whatever it is in your life that God has given you that you feel like has been an uphill battle, this child that just won't come around, this boss that I just can't gain favor with, when you start treating it like a crisis, you start saying, I've got to give up on this because it's time to walk away, instead of where are we at in the process? Look at process. Look at this picture. Look at that seed. Where are we at in the process? And look how close it is to breaking through before it does. And how often in our life do we dig up a seed, walk away, say it was a crisis, I'm out of there, that was just crazy, I don't want to work on that, I don't want to fix that, I don't want to stay faithful to whatever God has called me to. We walk away, and you know what we'll say? I was right, because it never broke through. No, friends, you dug it up before it had a chance. And that robs you, and it robs the people of watching the process and seeing what faithfulness and loyalty looks like. If you start treating the season you're in like a crisis, you will grow discouraged. But the DNA of the miracle that God has promised you is in the seeds he has put in your life. So do not dig them up. Secondly, seeds require work. Seeds require waiting. How many of you just love waiting? Just you stand in a line. I just picture Gail like in a line, just so peaceful. Like you seem like the kind of guy that you just could wait. It doesn't bother you. I try so hard to be that way. Like be patient. But it's not very long before I'm like, ah. And not because I'm frustrated with waiting. I just am like, I have a lot to do. And so when we first moved to Hawaii, there's this phrase there called talking story. Or in Hawaiian, they might say vala'aling. Just means just sitting around all day and talking story. which you might think would be reserved for like a bonfire or a birthday party. But no, it's reserved for like the grocery store. And so you run in and you have somewhere to be in 20 minutes and you think, I'm going to just grab this quick and go. And then the person in front of you is like showing the cashier pictures of their babies on their phone and in no hurry. And you walk up and you think, if I put my things on the belt, it isn't that they don't see you. It's that they're just busy talking story. And when they're done, whenever that is, they'll talk to you and you'll get your turn and you can't be in a hurry. And so we had taken our kids to school. We lived there maybe 2 weeks. I dropped the kids off at school. I ran errands all day and thought, I have an hour or so before I need to pick them up, and I just needed to go to the electric company. So I get in line, and the guy in front of me is just talking, and they're going on, and then they're like talking about history they had together, oh yeah, when we were in high school, and I see the clock, and I'm thinking, I'm going to be late to get my kids. And there was a part of me that said, it's just getting rude. Like, it's fine to talk. It's been 30 minutes. I'm just standing here. I know you see me. And so I thought, this is just ridiculous. And now, mind you, we'd only lived there 2 weeks. I didn't know the ways. And so I thought, I know, no one's in a hurry. It's Hawaii. I get it. But they have this phrase called try wait. And that means just wait indefinitely and try it. Maybe you'll like it, I guess. I'm not really sure. And so I finally spoke up and said, hey, guys, sorry to interrupt, but I have to pick my son up at school, and I just needed to pay this bill or put this deposit down, whatever. We needed electricity, and we had to get it in our name. I just need to take care of this. And they look at me for a long minute, and I think, okay, I know I've angered them, but I don't know what I did wrong. And the guy says, okay. And then he just closed his window and walked away. So I waited and waited and waited. And finally his friend just started laughing. He said, he's gone. Like, that was it. I had to come back another day because I did not know how to wait Hawaiian style. So I just learned the hard way. Hurrying them is not going to help. We have to just wait. Maybe that's part of the reason God called us to the world's slowest moving culture and the planet, to learn how to slow down. And so I remember walking through a grocery store and people would stop me and say, where are you from? And I'd say, I live here. But how did you know I wasn't from here? How fast you walk. Like, I'm trying. I'm trying to slow down. And so here's the thing. When we start comparing our seeds to someone else's forest, we get really frustrated in the waiting. When we start comparing what God has given us right now to where somebody else is several years down the line of waiting and tilling soil, then we get frustrated. God gives us a mango seed. A mango seed takes time. We bury it. We pray. We plant. We water. We do the things we're supposed to do. And then we look over at our neighbor's garden. Oh, well, they had 47,000 peaches this year, and I'm still waiting on a mango seed. Listen, when we start comparing ourselves to where other people are at in the process, we get frustrated in the waiting because we don't pay attention to where other people are when they're waiting. We only pay attention to where they are when they've succeeded. And we forget the battle and the prayer and the time it took to get to that place. There was a time that we were brand new married. Hadn't been a year. And I was 18, maybe 19, and decided I was going to plant a garden. But got in my mind that the easiest thing to grow seems to be wildflowers because they grow where people don't want them. And so I just got these wildflower seeds, and I planted them in my garden. But our neighbor was so sweet and a great gardener, and she came over one day and started talking to me. And I said about this lovely garden that I had. And I was saying to her, yeah, they just don't look like I thought they would. Like, I pictured this really pretty wildflower garden, and she started pointing out, well, that one's not a flower. That's weed. And that's not a flower. And when we weeded the whole garden, I think I probably had 3 flowers left. But I didn't know the difference. I couldn't tell the flowers from the weeds. Hear me, friends. When you plant seeds, sometimes weeds are going to spring up. And if you get tired in the waiting, you're just going to start to think that's all there is. Be patient in the process. What God has promised, just like the word today, what God has promised, he will see it through. So we don't know how hard that other person watered that seed. We don't know how many sleepless nights that mom prayed for her son before he came back home. We don't know how that marriage has fought behind closed doors for God's perfect will. We miss that, and we look at other people. We see newlyweds sometimes that we counsel with, and they want to be like the married couple that's been married 30 years. And, you encourage them, but in my head, I think you will be in 30 years. It takes 30 years to get there. Friends, if we want to be the church that God has called us to be, we have to be willing to wait on the will of God. We can't get frustrated in the process. So we wait on it. I found this great story. The oldest viable seed to have grown into a plant was a date palm seed, estimated to be 2,000 years old, making it the only surviving contemporary of Jesus. It was discovered in 1963 when Herod the Great's fortress of Masada near the Dead Sea was excavated. It was planted in 2005. So they discovered it in 1963. They didn't plant it until 2005. And now Methuselah, as the plant is called, stands over 4 feet high. Botanists believe the seed had managed to remain viable for so long because the Dead Sea area's climate is exceptionally dry and stable. I love that. A seed 2,000 years old. But a seed is always a promise. And whatever promise God has given you, it does not have an expiration date. There is no, God called me into ministry, but I didn't go right after high school, and now it's too late. There is no expiration date on the promises of God. But I love this because that seed remained viable because it was in a stable environment. Stable means this: I am committed to the Lord and the things of God. And when these distractions come in, I'm not going to veer off my path just because somebody tells me, I don't know. My friend was in a marriage like that and it didn't work out. Or, some kids, they just never come home. I'm not going to give up just because. We look at our Christian life like this, like 2 guardrails. The prayer that we invest and the will of God. And when we're staying there, when we're staying in those guardrails and we say, I'm committed to the promise, I'm committed to the seed, the thing that God spoke to my heart, I am not going to veer off path. So why do so many people veer off path? Can I tell you why? Some of them grow frustrated. Some of them get tired in the waiting. But most people don't even know what the seeds are. They don't even have an idea. If I stood today in front of every church in all of our city, and ours included, and said, somebody give me a specific dream for Rhinebeck and the salvation of your friends and family, I'm going to tell you it is hard for people to verbalize it because many people say, I don't know. I don't know if it'd be great for us to be a Christian city. Well, let's get really specific. How many of you would like to see more young families here at New Life? Okay, keep your hands in there. You want to see more young families? How many of you are bringing a young family next Sunday? You can put your hands down. I'm not making you commit to that. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I want that. That'd be great. Hey, Jen, could you plant those seeds? That'd be great because I would love to see that tree in your garden, but I am out of water. I done my part. I've served. I tried. Your turn. Right? How many of you would like to see more signs and wonders in our church? How many of you are going to get up at 6 a.m. and pray for an hour every day? Do you see what I mean? We have these things, but they're not our seeds. I don't own them. I want them. It'd be great to see it, but it's not my responsibility. It's my dream, kind of, but it's not my seed, right? And then we look around and say, it'd be great is if we had more teachers for our boys on Wednesday night. Amen, right, Randy? If we had some help in our boys' ministry on Wednesday night, somebody ought to do that. Somebody ought to really step into that role. It'd be great if we had more nursery workers. Somebody ought to do that. It's so easy to identify the seeds that someone else should be planting, but so hard to own our own. Now, hear me, friends. I'm not trying to beat you up, but I'm trying to say, what are your seeds? What are the things that, and we have to be able to verbalize, this is what I want to see in my life. This is, when I look at my ministry at the center, we deal with literally life and death. We are literally every day, counseling young women who are facing unplanned pregnancies. 21% of all pregnancies in the United States end in abortion. 21%. What is my tangible seed? It's not going to be 21% in the Cedar Valley. Not when I'm done. That number is going to come down. And women in the Cedar Valley are going to defy statistics and odds, and they are going to choose life. And because they chose life, their kids and grandkids are going to choose life. And we are going to turn that needle back, and we are going to see clinics that offer abortion say, we're sitting here all day and nobody is coming in. We're going to speak truth, and we're going to speak life, and that is the seed of my dream. And so when somebody says, what are you doing for that? We are working hard every day, hand to the grindstone. Why? Because we know what is at stake. When you don't know what's at stake, when you don't know that there are generations that might be lost, when you don't know that there are people in Rhinebeck who think that if they just every now and then show up at church, that somehow they're right. But their marriages are in crisis, and their families are in crisis, and they are discouraged, and they are broken, and they are hurting, and they don't know who to turn to or even how to pray. When you know that what is at stake, you say, those seeds are my responsibility. But each one of us has been called to something specific. So what are we going to do as a church family to stay faithful to that? Seeds require work. Seeds require waiting. Oh, and this is the worst one, I feel like, requires our willingness. Because work, okay, I like hard work. And waiting, I'll learn. But the willingness part, let me read to you Matthew 13, 1 through 9. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plant. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times what was sown. He who has ears, let him hear. So hearts are likened to soil in this scripture. And it is our heart that determines whether we receive the seed or not. It isn't the seed. Let me say that one more time. It isn't the seed that determines what happens in your life. It is your heart and how you receive it. Because the same seed fell on all of that soil, and only some of it grew. And there are people that will come to the Lord as children and will live their entire life without ever telling another person about Jesus, without ever living sacrificially. They will get saved, and that is where the end of their journey stops. That's where it ends. I got saved, and that's the last time that I thought about Jesus, really. That's what they'll think. Listen, we're not raising up believers that don't believe. That's not what we're trying to do here at New Life Church. And so we're saying we have to constantly tend to the soil of our hearts, because God is constantly giving you new seed, and we want to make sure that it falls on good soil. How many of you have ever tried to witness to somebody and it went over like a lead balloon, right? Like they're hurting and you think, this is going to be great. So you tell them about Jesus and it just, doesn't work. My husband one time said something about Jesus, just a statement like what a difference Jesus has made in his life. And someone we know replied back with, this girl that I live with, she's my Jesus. Like, I don't need a God like you. I found one in this woman. And I mean, it was like, oh, well, nope, not what we were going for. That is not what we hoped would come out of that conversation. And that's just what happens sometimes. And you know, if you've really ever tried to witness to people, you can say and do all the right things. You can be prayed up and spirit-led, but if their heart isn't ready to receive, it may not go anywhere. But likewise, the responsibility of receiving what God has for us, what God has for New Life, what God has for your family, it falls on you. It's on your heart. So we have to keep our hearts soft. We have to keep that ground soft. If we know that God is giving us seeds, God has got a perfect will for each one of our lives, his good, pleasing, perfect will. And we have to be able to receive that. We've got to keep our hearts soft. We have to be willing to say, you know what? Because I want to be ready at any time for what God has, I am not going to allow any hardening of the soil of my heart. I am not going to be easily offended. Can I tell you, when we went into ministry 11 years ago, one of our mentors said to us, the thing that will shock you the most in ministry is that there are people that go to the church you go to, hear the sermons you hear, read the Bible you read, and they live nothing like you live. And I thought, no way. Why would someone go to church just to fake it once a week if you're not going to do it? And you think we're weird. I think that's super weird, to go to church and fake like you love Jesus, but you really don't. You know you're not fooling him. And why do you care? You think we're weirdos. Why do you care to fool us? If you're just faking it, why wouldn't you just stay at home and eat French toast? If you're watching this on TV, we really want you to come. We don't want you to stay at home and eat French toast. But I'm saying, if you don't really love Jesus, what would be the point, right? And so here we have this kind of like, people will come, they'll listen, they'll raise their hands, and then they'll go out and they'll live like they don't know Jesus at all. And if you saw them on a Tuesday, you wouldn't recognize them. But that isn't what surprised me the most. You know what surprised me the most? Is that Christians are as easily offended as non-Christians. And that is the thing that pulled the rug out from underneath me when I went into ministry, is watching the steady flow of people through my pastor's door, and it wasn't Oscar, it was a different pastor, but of people that were offended. People that said things like, can you, I wish I was making this up, but can you change that worship background? It looks like a colonoscopy. It was like, seriously. People that say, you put the chairs in a circle, that's disrespectful, I'm never coming back. I mean, the steady and never-ending flow of, you said we can't drink this or have this. You said that we can't eat a sloppy Joe sandwich on the altar, and that's my favorite place to eat them, so forget it. You said that, I can't just leave my kids in the nursery an hour before there's a worker in there. I mean, they're 2 years old. They're fine. They don't need supervision all the time. It's like crazy things that people get offended by, and then they just constantly expect that because they are offended, someone will tend to their offense. And hearts grow hard because somebody said something to me in a church lobby once, and I just never forgot it. Somebody looked at me funny. Somebody preached a sermon. I remember one time being called into my pastor's office, and there was a woman who was a leader in the church. Her husband was a leader in the church. And my pastor said, I don't know what you did, but you really, really offended them, and they're threatening to leave the church. I was the youth pastor, and they won't tell me what happened. So we sit down, and the teenage girl is there, and it's like like she can't, okay, seriously, I don't even know what I did and you're crying that hard, but here's some tissues, like what happened, I want to make this right. And she starts saying, you embarrassed me in front of everybody. So I'm racking my brain, like, what did I do? I'm sometimes foot and mouth, if I talk long enough, so I'm just trying to figure it out. And finally, she says, when you said several weeks ago on a Wednesday night, I said to everyone, we're about to go into our altar time. Can everyone put their phones away? She said, and then a couple people didn't. And I said, no, guys, seriously. We're in a room about 120 kids. Seriously, can everyone put their phones away? That's all I said. And I went on. Well, she had her phone in the pocket of her hoodie and was texting through her pocket, which honestly, I'm impressed. She didn't even have to see the screen. She could just push her buttons through the shirt. And she just knew that I knew, and that's why I said that. And she went home and told her mom. Now, on this particular night, we probably had a dozen unsaved kids give their lives to Jesus. We saw signs, wonders, healings, deliverances. But she went home and told her mom. She embarrassed me in front of everybody and said, I almost said her name, but we'll call her Jane. Jane, put your phone away. So mom picks up that cause. She did what? She called you out. Not did you have your phone out, but she did. And in front of everybody, she said your name. Yes, she called me out by name. And her brother was there. So mom said, what happened? He said, I don't know. I didn't hear anything. So back to typical teenage boy. I didn't even know. I didn't hear anything. So mom's upset. She goes to dad. Dad's upset. They come to the pastor. If she's going to bully our kid, we're leaving. And so I sit in this meeting and I said, are you sure I said your name? Well, no, you didn't say my name, but you looked at me. Okay. What I recall is this. And as I told the story, I mean, you could see like the blood kind of leave mom's face. It was red. She was mad. But she's like, wait, so you didn't actually call her out in front of everybody? No, I didn't. Oh, okay. Now listen, could she have brought that concern to me in love and said, hey, I'm upset about this? But they had rallied the troops. I'm not kidding. They were ready to burn me at the stake for something I didn't even do. And that's one of thousands of stories I could tell you in ministry that I have seen where, and this isn't like, oh, poor me. I'm saying it's the body of Christ has gone